Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. Each weekday, we're looking at stories, making headlines, and bringing experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing those stories that impact you. Atlanta is growing fast, but keeping a roof over your head has never been tougher. Rents are rising, affordable homes are disappearing, and even the middle-class families are finding themselves priced out. The Atlanta Regional Commission calculates roughly 52% of renters in Metro Atlanta are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income just on housing. They estimate a shortage of about 68,000 affordable units for households making $80,000 or less. And in just the past 5 years, Metro Atlanta has lost more than 230,000 affordable rentals, including more than 54,000 units under $800 a month. The only growth has been in high rent apartments over $1,500 a month. Here from the Atlanta Regional Commission is Ann Carpenter. She is the Chief Research and Innovative Officer. Ann, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Chesley. Great to be here.
I'm glad you're with us. When you hear the stories of teachers or firefighters being priced out of their communities that they serve in, what does that say about the state of the housing in Atlanta right now?
Yeah, Atlanta had a reputation really for being a more affordable market for many years. And so this is a concern, and it's really a concern across the metro area. You know, for years, this was kind of seen as maybe more of a city of Atlanta issue, but we're seeing that these cost pressures are more widespread, really spreading into more of our suburban areas and really across the region.
Yeah, you heard me say earlier, and you laid out the definition of cost burden as being 30%, spending more than 30% of your income just on housing alone. But some would feel like they're not that burdened. How complex is this definition?
So affordability is quite relative. It means that the housing costs for a rental home or to own a home are such that that family can still afford their basic necessities and expenses, and really ideally have some sort of cushion left over for savings or emergencies. And so when you look at how you breaking that down by income level, for folks who are making $80,000 a year, that number is smaller. If they're making $30,000 a year, it's even smaller. So I think we need to think about this in a very relative way on a sliding scale and think about people's opportunities to kind of invest in their future with that additional cushion that they should have. Are they not spending so much on their rent or housing costs?
Yeah, and your organization has been sounding an alarm for years. Why hasn't that translated into real relief for renters on the ground?
So we are working on this issue, and it's been gaining momentum. So we have a lot of optimism about the work that we're doing now and hopeful that it can start to make a change. One of the things that we have provided and created is the Metro Atlanta Housing Strategy, which is at metroatlhousing.org. And this tool really helps at the community level, our jurisdictions, cities, and counties understand the challenges that they're facing in particular. And in that context, help them to understand solutions for increasing the supply of affordable housing or increasing housing affordability in their areas. So we do know that there's no kind of silver bullet or one-size-fits-all solution, and that's why we're helping to create more customized solutions and a suite of kind of options for these communities. And then coming in and like helping to set the table with cross-sector partners, because we know that housing doesn't happen in a vacuum, that there are so many other kind of issues at play in terms of making sure that households can create and maintain financial stability. And so these are a couple of ways that we're working with our partners across the region on really helping to establish and promote some customized solutions for increasing the supply of affordable housing.
Yeah, and let's say, for example, nothing changes. What's the worst case scenario for Atlanta's housing affordability by the end of the decade?
Oh, the worst case scenario. That's not something I really want to think about, Chesley. I do think that this is an issue that's going to affect our economic kind of competitiveness. We have been growing and continuing to grow over the past decades, although at a slower rate than we did in, say, the 90s or the early 2000s. And I think that this will really start to impact that growth and to slow it down and to perhaps prevent new jobs from coming in and from new Atlantans from moving here and having economic opportunity, essentially.
Is there anybody out there? There. Georgia State scientists seem to think they may be able to find it. A bold new telescope project aims to spot oceans, continents, even city lights on faraway planets if they have them. And GSU is right in the middle of all of it, building the tool that could help us answer the number one question in humanity. Is there anybody out there in the universe, or are we all alone? Here with maybe some answers to that question is Stuart Jeffries at the GSU, professor of physics and astronomy. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Chesley.
Oh, absolutely. When you hear people talk about searching the cosmos, it sounds like science fiction, but how close are we really to answering that age-old question?
I think we're in the best position we've been in for a long time. There are a lot of technologies that have come together at the moment, and they're allowing us to build a telescope, basically, that I think has a pretty good chance of finding a signature.
Yeah. Why do you think people want to know that? Why do you think people want to know if there's anybody else out there?
It's curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to think, what are the odds that we're the only planet like this? I mean, we have in our universe, we have billions of galaxies. We have, in each galaxy, there's billions of stars, and each star's probably got several planets. So what are the odds that we're the only one out there? I think people are just curious. They want to know.
Yeah, I'm one of them, I must admit, and I do believe it. I believe that we can't be the only one, so it has to be another planet somewhere that houses some folks, right, or something as of life. Now on to the what you're looking for. You talk about the answer. We talk about this thing called ELF that you have, Exoplanet
Yes.
Life Finder. Talk to us about it.
Okay, so ELF is a different type of telescope. Basically, you can think of it as a set of mirrors that are on the outside of something that looks like a bicycle wheel. These mirrors is a new technology. We're able to make them much thinner than previously, and it means they're much lighter. And the bicycle wheel is very unique because, again, it's a lightweight structure, but it's the tension in the spokes is being manipulated by artificial intelligence. Because what we need to do is we need to keep all of the mirrors in a configuration to within a few millionths of a meter all the time that we're actually making our observations. And we're able to build a telescope, we hope, up to 50 meters, which means that we'll be able to see very, very small, fine detail in the sky. And you can imagine what we're trying to do, right, is we're trying to look at a star, and right next to the star, there's the planet, which is only reflecting a small amount of the star's light. And so we're completely swamped by the light from the star. So it's a little bit like maybe being at the football stadium, where I ask you to look up into the spotlights, and I strike a match in the middle of the spotlights, and I ask you to see it. It's a really hard problem, but we believe that we are able to now shape the light that comes into our telescope so that we can get rid of the vast majority of the light from the star, and we can see the very faint glow coming from the planets.
Is the telescope built already, or is it in construction right now?
Oh, so at the moment we're building a prototype that's 1/10 scale. It's being built out in the Canary Islands. It should be up and observing within 2 years. Once we prove that concept, then we will go after the funding needed for the 50-meter telescope.
How far out will you be able to see?
Whoa, we'll be able to see, you mean in terms of light years?
Yep.
Several thousand light years.
Wow. And I have to, we're going to wrap up here, but I have to ask you this. Do you think that there is life out there?
Absolutely. But do I think I'll be having coffee with ET? No. I think it's more likely to be something like microbes that can live in extreme environments, maybe, or that we'll see some sort of vegetation. Water. I mean, the first thing we want to see is water.
Right.
But is there something out there? Absolutely.
The issue of mental health is of concern in the Hispanic and Latino communities, where experts say stigma, lack of resources, and too few cultural relatable providers continue to widen the care gap. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, just over a third of Hispanic and Latino adults with mental illness receive service, compared to more than half of white adults. Even more striking, less than 15% of Hispanic and Latinx adults reported getting any mental health treatment in the past year. And when it comes to those living with a diagnosed mental illness, just about a third of Hispanic adults get treatment, well below the national average of 46%. Roger Rivera is a mental health nurse practitioner at Minty Suave Medical in Florida there. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Very important topic to talk about here. And how proper mental health care differs from those in the Latino and Hispanic communities. How is it different?
That's a very good question, because what we really see is the stigma behind things, right? One thing that makes me unique in the niche that I'm in is, well, I'm American, born in LA, but I actually did a lot of my medical training down in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. So I got to see the nuances behind things, right? I mean, I got to see how, for example, bipolar disorder, how that term is just used so freely, right? They use it as a derogatory term, just they use it jokingly. So, a lot of times that could start getting into the weeds of things when it comes to cultural, so awareness and all that type of stuff, right? But the stigma, the fear leads to a delay in care and all that stuff.
Gotcha. What are some of the biggest barriers when it comes to Hispanic and Latino families when it comes to seeking healthcare treatment or mental health care treatment?
Yeah, when it comes to barriers, I mean, unfortunately, we have too many barriers, right? I think one of the biggest differences that I'm seeing a lot now is generational differences. That's a big one, right? My older generation, they tend to still be more guarded and just keep in private. My younger generation, they are raising more awareness. However, especially with the digital age and everything else, and they're more open to discussions, but at the same time, there's still a lot of stigma behind it, a lot of unknown data, a lot of unknown knowledge. So that's where, they could become reluctant. So there's that gap that we have to bridge. There's also the practitioners that could actually understand the culture and the language, right? Because all different types of Latin cultures are going to be a little bit different. Right, some of these things that happen might be more culturally based. Sometimes it may be because of an education component. There's always trauma and all these other things that are involved as well. But yeah, so there's definitely a lot of barriers. Yeah,
we do know here in Georgia and across very many cities across the U.S., the Latino and Hispanic communities are growing. Do you think a healthcare system is prepared to meet that demand?
By the numbers, I think we have a challenge, right? I mean, we've been talking about this for years. I mean, I've been now in the medical field going on 15, 16 years of training. And I mean, from bachelor's to doctorate, it's always been, those numbers keep on increasing, right? So I think it's a challenge that as a community we have yet to actually have a good grasp on. We're doing a better job. We're getting more academia out there. I'm trying to teach. I actually go on the national stage to try to teach not just clinicians, but also people within the community. So as long as there's more knowledge, more education, we might be able to meet those goals. But right now, definitely, it's a concern for all of us in the field. Yeah,
you mentioned cultural stigma earlier on. Talk to me about someone that may be suffering from something like bipolar disorder, and whether they seek help or whether they just hide it.
Unfortunately, far too many times, what we don't know, we can't verbalize, right? Mm-hmm. So I see it too many times where, I mean, there's different variations of this, right? Because it's a very heterogeneous, or a very difficult condition to pinpoint, right? Sometimes true bipolar disorder could take 8 to 10 years in some of the older data sets to diagnose. I mean, we're talking about this is a prevalence of 2 to 4% within the adult population of bipolar disorder. So it's up there, it's out there, it's just looking for it, right? If we don't know how to look for it, and this could happen with my clinicians, this is why it's imperative that we teach them as well. But yeah, so the symptoms, right? Can't control those highs, can't control those lows. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that could be intermingled with self-injurious behavior, sometimes with psychotic type features. That's when it goes probably years without being taken care of, mm-hmm. right? And the initial onset, sometimes we might see some rapid onset of speech. Sleep starts being more erratic. So like I tell people, you have to listen to your body, but that only comes with education, right? So talking to your provider, whether that's that primary care physician. A lot of times I talk to my primary care colleagues because they are the boots on the ground sometimes. They'll have this patient that's coming in month after month for weight reasons or metabolic issues. And a lot of times it's a psychiatric part, substance with psychiatry and bipolar, all these things go together, right? So going off on a tangent there, but how do we improve it? It's being more family-centered and having a lot of education, finding support, right? The right support.
Yeah, Roger, got 20 seconds left here. If you could change one thing about the Hispanic and Latino community when it comes to the narrative around mental health, what would it be?
No pressure at all. I think that healing is possible. Stigma is breakable, and no one should walk this path alone. No, I stand firmly by that we could help. Everybody could be helped. Veterans, Latin, doesn't matter.
Take a look at the tarmac at Hartsfield-Jackson. It's the world's busiest airport, as you know, but it's now fighting turbulence in a different kind of way. At least $37.5 million in federal money meant for key upgrades are off the table, tied not to travel, but a fight over diversity policies. City leaders say the loss in funding won't ground operations, but it does raise questions about how the airport will pay for projects and whether the city will bend or stand firm on its DEI commitments. Here to help us understand the fallout from this funding is Wesley Longhofer. He's the Associate Professor of Organization and Management at Emory. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. Please explain to us how this tug of war between federal rules and local values makes sense for people just trying to catch a plane.
Well, I think one way to think about it is that all the headlines have been about Atlanta losing $37 million. But another way to think about it is that perhaps Atlanta thought that the economic benefit of these programs over 40 years is worth more than $37 million. You think about the impact the airport has. $60 billion in the Georgia economy, 60,000 employees or more. It's a huge player in our local economy, and perhaps they decided that it's worth it to keep these programs to support these small businesses than to do away with those programs to keep that $37 million. Yeah. It's important to keep in mind that $37 million is about 10% of the capital budget for all these upgrades. And so I imagine they're looking for other ways to find those funds.
You said it's not 10, it's about 10%, or is it not 10%?
What I've read is it's roughly about 10% of the overall budget for upgrades.
So what's really at stake here? Is it the money itself, or is it the message that Atlanta is sending and standing by its DEI programs?
Well, I think if you think about the importance of these programs in our city, that the programs that are being scrutinized by the current federal administration are programs that originated with our airport. You look at what Maynard Jackson did to help support minority-owned businesses in our city. Doubled the number of Black-owned businesses during his tenure, a lot of that due to the airport and the contracts that businesses were getting. You think about the impact that has on employment, wealth generation, and we still have a long way to go in our city to close some of these gaps, but it's hard to imagine our airport being what it is without Maynard Jackson's efforts to help support small businesses. Mm-hmm. So I think it is about the values of our city, the identity of Atlanta, and this is kind of the Atlanta way to go out and take a stand on what they think is right for civil rights or social justice in our city. It does come with an economic cost, but I'm pretty confident that the mayor's office and the airport are looking for other ways to make up those funds. Yeah,
our viewer here is $37 million. They may be wondering, is that going to change the way the airport operates from day to day?
It doesn't appear to, from my knowledge, that this was going to be for upgrades on things like bathrooms, some sustainability programs that the airport had put in place to kind of reduce emissions. Again, we all want clean bathrooms and functioning bathrooms when we go to the airport. I don't anticipate this is going to disrupt daily operations in any way. I'm pretty confident in our airport to continue functioning without that $37 million, but I also can't predict the future.
Yeah. Do you think this is a one-off fight, or do you think this is the beginning of a trend where cities have to choose between money and DEI?
That's a really good question. I think what we've seen, whether it's universities, corporations, cities, this is a collective action problem. It's hard for any single organization or city to push back on their own, right? You want to do that kind of together with other cities and work together. We know that some cities are taking this to the courts and trying to take it to stop this executive this decision by the Trump administration to stop it at the court system. Atlanta decided to go a different way. I think collectively, cities will be looking to Atlanta for guidance on how to do this. Mm-hmm. These programs originated here. They're part of who we are, and this is a chance for Atlanta to lead the way.
Is it now, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but does the airport now look for private funding from somewhere else? Do they fundraise? How do they work that out to meet the gap?
They might go to bonds and try to raise it through bonds. They could do it through fees at the airport. I imagine that they're going to be pretty creative about this. They might go to philanthropic sources to help cover that gap, or they might be able to stretch the rest of the capital money to meet those upgrades without this $37 million. There's still a chance that the city might go back to the administration and get some of that money back, but the city's been pretty clear that they don't want to walk back on those commitments.
Yeah. As an Atlanta resident, why should you care about this debate? What would you tell people?
I'd say, like, think about all the different spillover effects that the airport has on our economy, all the people it employs, the small businesses it supports. Atlanta is where it is because that airport has been so successful. And so think about all the different ways that airport serves us, whether you're flying or not. We want to continue that work, and this has been a key part of that work. And so I think this is Atlanta just trying to figure out a way to keep doing what it does well. And I have faith in our great city, in our airport.
Absolutely. Only got a couple seconds left here. What would be, and I'm looking at worst case scenario, right? If they lost more funding, what would be one of the first things we would see as a difference?
Maybe the hand washing stations won't work in the bathrooms. I don't anticipate this is going to have a huge effect on the airport's operations. It's a massive budget, and this is a very small piece of it, and they're probably going to make up that money somewhere else. This is about Atlanta sticking to its values, and so I don't think it's going to disrupt daily operations at the airport in any way.
Turns out your credit score may be on a little bit of a diet. It's shedding points. And behind those trim numbers are some heavy financial pressures weighing on Americans. The Fair Isaac Corporation, or FICO, says its average score in the U.S. dipped to 715 this year, down 2 points from last year. And that's the biggest one-year drop since the Great Recession. Young borrowers took the brunt as Gen Z scores fell about 3 points, leaving their average at about 676, well below the national mark. Credit card delinquencies have surged nearly 50% since 2001, signaling more Americans are struggling to keep up with paying those bills. Here to explain what's behind this dip is our consumer expert and friend of the show, Morgan Ward. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. All right, so what's the big pictures and when it comes to this story, and what's behind why this is happening now?
Just as you said, Chesley, the scores are going down, and they are on the fastest decline since 2008. So we have that across the board, but again, as you said, Gen Z is suffering the most. The reasons for it are very linked to the economy. Things that we've been talking about. So we have high inflation and we have rising prices, and those two things work in conjunction. So meaning you're paying higher prices and your interest rates are higher, which means that we have higher credit card debt. And so that is raising the incidence of scores going down.
What does a 2-point drop in the national average really mean for the everyday consumer?
For the everyday consumer, it has 2 points isn't a huge deal, but is starting to have implications. So it makes it harder for us to get more credit. It makes it harder for us to rent homes. Your employers often see that score, so people have impressions of that, and it just makes money more expensive for you to attain, essentially.
So if you're a consumer out there worried about your credit score slipping a little bit here, what's the single most impactful step you can take right now?
It's paying your credit debt and making sure that that debt is under 35% of your total credit. So that's a very important inflection point number. When you have less than 35% usage of your credit, you tend to have a higher credit score. And then, of course, this disproportionately affects Gen Z for a bunch of reasons, but some of them being that they don't have a long credit history, and also they have been recently faced with all of these rising costs that are linked to the debt from schools, which they have started to have to pay these days.
Is that what it is? When we talk about Gen Z, is it just the loan debt that they have? What really, I guess, mistakes should they avoid taking?
Well, Gen Z has to be particularly mindful of making sure that they're paying their credit card debt, because they have less credit in general, less credit history, and often less access to money. So even if they have a small amount in a sort of absolute way, that's probably a large proportion of the access that they have. But of course, now they are required to pay back their student loans, and that has caused some delinquencies as people have started to have to change and integrate that new cost into their oftentimes lower salaries.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead, do you expect the scores to keep sliding down, or do you think we're bottoming out here?
I think that as interest rates decline and hopefully we see less sort of inflation in our pricing, I think that people will use their debt a little bit differently, and people will be more likely to pay down their debt and not to accumulate quite as much.
All right, last question here. It's got to be a quick one here. We got about 30 seconds left. Bottom line, what should Atlanta families be watching for as the credit scores dip?
It's really important to be paying on time, and also just as important to try to keep that credit card debt low. So if you can possibly pay with your free cash, that would be the best decision right now.
There are two pivotal ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House and the U.S. Capitol. The physical distance, just 2 miles apart, but today they could not be farther apart in every other way. As of now, the federal government is shut down, and it is unclear when it'll reopen. Nearly 750,000 federal workers are now without pay, and this stretches across a wide range of agencies. Air traffic controllers and TSA remain on the job at the nation's airports, but without pay, while more than half of the staff for the National Institutes of the Health and Atlanta-based CDC are furloughed. The Congressional Budget Office estimates the shutdown is draining about $400 million every single day, costs that rise sharply the longer this stalemate drags on. Yesterday, congressional leaders attempted to point blame as to who's causing the shutdown.
We didn't ask Democrats to swallow any new Republican policies. We didn't add partisan riders. We simply asked Democrats to extend existing funding levels to allow the Senate to continue the bipartisan appropriations work that we started. And Senate Democrats said no.
Republicans once again rejected Democrats' proposals to avoid a shutdown, fix health care premiums, and spare Americans the calamity of skyrocketing through the roof health care costs. Republicans blocked it again, once again.
All right, so what's happening now and where do we go from here? We bring in Sina Galara, an assistant professor of supply chain management at Georgia State's Robinson College of Business. Welcome back to the show.
Hello and good morning. Happy to be here.
All right, now that we are here, what should Americans first brace for with agencies closed for the time being?
So I think this will have primarily a human effect. All these employees that are not getting paid, this is going to have a real impact on their lives and their morale at work. Some of them have to be working without pay. So that's the first effect. Secondarily, other citizens might see delays in processing their government-related efforts, perhaps travel, and airport lines will be longer, rail traffic will be slower, and some of the services at national parks will also be impacted.
There have been government shutdowns for decades, many different administrations, but we're hearing that this shutdown could hit American households harder than previous ones. Why do you think that's the case, and what are you expecting?
So one of the things that the Trump administration has said they'll do is they'll try to make some of these furloughs permanent. And so they'll try to use the opportunity to reduce some of the forces they have. So that might have a longer term impact on labor if that happens. And last time we had a 35-day, more than a month of shutdown, and it had a tangible effect on the economy. It's important to remember if these payments are not paid to government employees, that's just less money going around, and then these people will not be able to buy other things, and so other businesses will be impacted in a chain reaction.
Let's talk more about that, because is there a point of no return where a temporary shutdown really morphs into lasting economic scars?
So it's more of an accelerating effect. So if it only lasts for 1 or 2 weeks, probably negligible effect, because once everybody's back to work, payments will be made and some of the delays will be handled. A very small amount of business activity may never come back because it was just canceled, or the delay has a permanent mark on it. But for the most part, it will have a small effect. But if it becomes longer, problems accelerate. This is kind of like a household. If you're not get paid for 1 or 2 weeks, perhaps you can handle it. You have enough budget to deal with it. But if you're not paid for a month or longer, then you will have to deal with much more serious consequences.
Do you think we'll see a ripple effect in the supply chain?
I think it adds up every week because, again, government is a big player in the economy and they pay a lot of people and they create a lot of business activity as they purchase different things. And so if they stop doing that, many businesses and many households don't get paid, and then that starts a chain reaction throughout the supply chain. Level by level, people don't get paid, business activity slows down, and so you get weaker and weaker economy after that.
In Georgia, which industries do you expect will feel the pain first?
So a lot of industries that are primarily represented by the government, probably things related to education or some non-essential parts of health, as you mentioned, perhaps some of the CDC employees. We are also in a very supply chain heavy region of the country, and so lots of business in Georgia depends on air travel and rail and transportation. Some of that will be affected.
Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking about business travel as you were saying that. That starts in Atlanta at the world's busiest airport and goes all over the place. Do you see companies maybe delaying orders, contracts, even hiring, because there is this uncertainty as of this morning with the shutdown? No one's certain what's coming next and what a timeline might look like.
Uncertainty is indeed one of the worst things that can happen to business activity. And at this point, as a business manager, you have no idea if this thing is going to take, a few days, a week, or a month or so. So the natural reaction from many business, the prudent reaction from many business leaders could actually be slowing down the decision making and not investing, not committing too long on things that they're not sure about. So this uncertainty could actually have a substantial effect on business activity as well.
And as we always see, small businesses tend to be more vulnerable, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because this all depends on how much buffer you have, how much financial resources and inventory you have to deal with temporary disruptions like this. But the smaller firms don't have much of that, so they are much more vulnerable.
All right, so many impacts and so much uncertainty. So we really appreciate the insight and what this impact could really mean. Sina Galara, always good to get your insight. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you very much.
There is an active arrest warrant for actor Tyrese Gibson. Authorities allege his cane corso dogs mauled and killed a neighbor's small pet in Buckhead. Gibson's attorneys say that the animals have since been rehomed, and he has expressed condolences to the family. But the case is sparking a much bigger question and conversation. How do owners properly train and control powerful breeds? Let's bring in Blake Rashad, founder of the Top Dog Canine Foundation, to talk more about that discipline, responsibility, and prevention. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, sorry under these circumstances. When you heard what happened, what was the first thing that came to your mind? Because you have so much expertise and experience in this.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind is it is a challenge if you're not familiar with working dogs, big dogs, aggressive dogs, or dogs that have a high prey drive. All of these causes dogs to do things, to be overly aggressive or overly active. Either way, people and other dogs can find themselves in danger.
When we talk about training a dog, any breed, what are some of the standard rules that you feel are most important for people to follow?
Well, most of the time, people don't get enough training. They just get a little bit of training from the local PetSmarts and stuff like that, and that's just puppy training. You really need a comprehensive training where your dog goes through a few weeks of training, inboarding training, or multiple classes. And also you need remedial to keep your dog on task.
In the case of Tyrese Gibson's dogs, those are cane corsos. They're huge. You know, the male dogs can be up to 120 pounds. Even the females are close to 100 pounds. And we know that the dog that was mauled was a smaller breed. What are the biggest mistakes you see when owners, when it comes to these really powerful large breed dogs?
Well, the biggest mistakes people make is they don't understand what they have. You need to be very aware of what type of working dog that you have, because these dogs have extremely high prey drives and they go after anything that runs, whether that be a child, a mailman, or a dog. and they'll go after these people or dogs with intense aggression. So you have to prepare your yard. You have to know what you have. And you have to walk your property and make sure that your yard hasn't changed. Trees haven't fallen on your fence, or holes haven't been dug in your yard. You have to make sure the fence is tall enough and strong enough to hold a 140-pound dog. This is not a 4-foot fence type dog.
Sure.
You know.
We mentioned that warrant is out for Tyrese Gibson. Do you think a lot of people aren't aware of the liability they have as an owner in controlling a pet?
Absolutely. Most people are not aware. The warrant is out because they ask him to turn himself in. On usually cases like this, they'll give copy of charges. They'll come out to your house, assess the situation. If you release the dogs, then they'll take the dogs. If you don't, they'll get a court order for them to take the dogs. But if you don't comply to them telling you to come in, then they have no choice but to set a warrant. That's why that happened. In normal cases, it's not necessary a warrant will be set.
And Gibson, of course, has shared a statement saying he's terribly sorry for what happened, really thinking about the other family who lost that dog. Let's talk a little bit more about the other side of that. What would you say to someone who's just lost a beloved pet in an attack like this?
It's difficult. It's difficult. You should, grieving for a pet is very difficult, and you should communicate with people that already have pets and understand pets. Sometimes talking to coworkers that's never owned a pet, they really don't understand the grieving process and the love that a pet gives you and you give a pet. So they kind of look at you a little odd because they really don't understand. So you want to reach out to people that really understand, possibly people that already knew your pet and who's probably going to share that loss.
Yeah, really grief on both sides of this equation, no doubt about it. If you could leave owners with one rule to live by, what would it be? Be
prepared. Don't wait. Dogs are going to do what dogs do. Don't just allow them to do it. Be prepared. So if you have a big dog or if you have a high drive dog, get the fence, get the privacy fence, get the heavier gauge fence, and watch your dog. If you have a dog like that, aggressive dog, go out with it while it's in your backyard and watch your dog so it doesn't hop the fence and do something dangerous.
Every morning, more than 1 million Georgia children climb aboard a school bus, and parents trust that those buses will bring them home safely. But nearly 100 times since August, that trust's been shaken by wrecks caused by other drivers. 11Alive's gridlock guy, Doug Turnbull, is here with why these crashes keep happening. And Doug, what it really will take to protect our children and our roads. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks. Good to talk to you, Cheryl. I know you have a teenage driver in your house, so they're probably making that transition from being on a school bus to being a driver behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And whether we have school buses or other cars in school zones or pedestrians, we know that those are zones where a lot more things could go wrong. So one of the things here is that the Georgia State Patrol and rather Department of Public Safety put out some stats a couple of weeks ago that between August 1st and August 11th, there were nearly 200 school bus crashes in the state of Georgia, and around 95 of those are where other drivers were at fault. They also said in those numbers, Cheryl, that 91% of the injuries in school bus crashes aren't with, and you see them on the screen here, aren't with children in the buses, but they're actually with people in those other vehicles because those are smaller. So the State Patrol and the Georgia Department of Public Safety had some tips they told me about helping people actually save themselves as much as saving the kids.
Yeah, you know, you really think about the drivers. In full transparency, my dad was a lifelong teacher, and when he retired, he started driving a school bus because he missed the kids so much. And he would tell me, I wish I could just remind people about my precious cargo because people feel so busy around me. I don't think they're intentionally trying to be dangerous, but it's hard to navigate a vehicle of that size. Think about it on these busy Atlanta roads.
It's extremely hard to do. So we did a report very similar to this about tractor trailers, and the Department of Public Safety's Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit helps to keep those safe and enforce those trucks, keeping other drivers safe, same as they do with school buses. They inspect about 20,000 school buses a year. One thing that the commander of the DPS's School Bus Safety Division, Anthony Hudson, told me is drivers drivers should give about 2 car lengths between themselves and a bus, and always assume that a bus in service with kids on it is about to stop. I mean, almost any time you see a bus, they're not flying by you, right? They're stop and go. So Hudson also gave a great reminder, which is, hey, remember, when school's back in, this is not a summer driving pattern. 2/3 or 3/4 of our year, we have buses on these roads that are stopping in neighborhoods that you're going to need to add extra time to your commute. And by the way, drivers need to be more patient, okay? If we have 1.7 million students in the state of Georgia, which we do approximately, that means that's like 1.7 million people rejoining the, quote, workforce.
Yeah.
Rejoining the workforce around August, right? So that means there's way more traffic on the road. So if we were just more patient, had our heads up and not down on our phones, a lot of these crashes wouldn't happen, whether there are kids on board these buses or not.
Sure. I was thinking about the emotional toll on all sides, for the bus driver who has the responsibility of the kids, for the kids or any parent or anyone who loves them at home and has to hear about something like this, but for the other drivers too. It's just a little bit of a different emotional situation when you're talking about a bus full of children.
A bus full of children, and anytime we hear about a school bus crash, Rachel Cox-Rosen and I on the traffic team, we immediately inquire, are there kids on board? Are they hurt? It's not like a regular crash, because you have sensitive lives out there. And think about this, even though the school buses are the safest way for kids to get to school versus walking or riding in a car, if they see a crash, like that SUV we saw the B-roll of a moment ago, that was in Cobb County, a crash that we covered. They might see a car upside down. They might see a person hurt. That could emotionally scar the kids as well as the driver that's having to haul them around.
Yeah, you made a really good point. There are buses who make it safely every single day that get to where they need to get to safely. But when we're talking about 100 crashes since August, it is an important conversation to have. So if you had 10 seconds to speak directly to a distracted driver about the life or death stakes here, what would you want to say to them?
Number one, distracted driving should have the same stigma and has the same effect as drunk driving. And number two, pretend like your own kids, if you have kids, are on that bus.
Breast cancer touches nearly every family in some way, whether it's a mother, a sister, friend, maybe a coworker. During this Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the focus isn't just on pink ribbons, but on the real people fighting, surviving, and pushing towards a cure. The American Cancer Society says about 1 in 8 women in the U.S. will develop invasive breast cancer in her lifetime, making it the most common cancer among women. Breast cancer remains the second leading cause of cancer death among women, taking about 43,000 lives in the U.S. each year. But when detected early and still localized, breast cancer has a 99% survival rate for 5 years, underscoring the importance of screenings and these conversations. So here's more about how we are fighting breast cancer is Dr. Nitika Sharma, medical oncologist and hematologist with City of Hope, Atlanta. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Technology changing quickly. What advancements in treatment are you seeing that are giving patients the best outcomes right now?
The breast cancer treatment breakthroughs and recent developments in research are fueling new ways to assess risk of breast cancer and prevent, detect, diagnose, and treat breast cancer. These new breast cancer treatment breakthroughs are focused on getting more effective drugs out to serve our people. And these drugs do not only specifically target breast cancer cells, but also are aimed to minimize side effects from treatments, as well as prevent breast cancer cells from coming back.
Yeah.
So while some treatments increase the effectiveness of existing drugs, others offer new innovative strategies for attacking tumor cells. The breast cancer treatment is not anymore one size fits all. The breast cancer is a wide umbrella with different types of breast cancer cells underneath, and each type of breast cancer is driven by separate mechanisms of resistance that can develop and the treatments that work for that.
So specialized treatments depending on what stage a woman it is and what cancer you see. The one thing that is pretty universal is this early detection and the need for mammograms, but there has been confusion over the guidelines about what age a woman should start that process. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. In general, if the patient does not have any risk factors over the age of 40, the USPSTF, the NCCN guidelines recommend screening for every woman over the age of 40 once a year. So an annual screening mammogram is recommended. However, there are certain high-risk population as well, such as individuals who have gotten radiation treatment for a different cause between the age of 10 and 30 years, individuals with family history of breast cancer, individuals with certain ethnicities such as Ashkenazi Jews may have a higher risk of carrying high-risk mutations such as BRCA mutation. And for those individuals, the screening may be recommended earlier than 40 years.
So those conversations are really important to have with a doctor. Black women in Georgia are often diagnosed at later stages and have higher mortality rates because of some barriers that we're seeing. Can you talk about the barriers and what we need to do to bring those down?
Yes. In general, the breast cancer incidence is higher amongst white women as compared to the Black women. But what is an interesting fact is that the Black women do have a higher risk of mortality when diagnosed with the breast cancer. There still exists a lot of disparity between when it comes to screening, screening itself, the diagnosis, and the research trials. And one of the goals of City of Hope is to work on those, removing those disparities in the diagnosis of breast cancer. The earlier the breast cancer is diagnosed, there is a much higher likelihood of cure. The earlier stage the cancer is, there is much high likelihood of cure and lower risk of the cancer coming back. So the focus of City of Hope is to overcome these barriers that exist between different races.
Yeah, and equity of access and care. Quickly, if someone were to think about doing one or two things differently in terms of their lifestyle to try to bring down their risk, quickly, what would that be?
The first and the foremost thing is, go for regular exams, see a doctor regularly and know your baseline. Okay. If you notice anything suspicious, don't hesitate to seek care.
Will someone please tell me what happened to my favorite sport growing up? I'm talking about professional boxing. It was a must-see, or at least a must-hear. I can remember back in the day listening to the fight on the radio, the Ali fights with my father. It was little. Oh man, it was a must-see, man. People would gather throughout the neighborhood to watch the latest Mike Tyson fight. It brought the whole community together. You sit there and you watch the fight. And now boxing has been reduced to gimmicks. Can you believe this? The latest announcement that Mike Tyson, who's 59 years old, has agreed to fight an exhibition fight against Floyd Mayweather Jr., who's 48 years old. Both of them great in their own time, but I'm sorry, they're old, all right? So there's few details about the match, other than that both sides have agreed to it, and it will likely take place in the spring of 2026. As sad as it is for the sport, as sad as it is for those two great fighters, I'm probably going to watch it. Sad for me, too. And the sport. Man, want to bring it back so badly. That's all we have for you today, folks. Make sure you have a great day and try to encourage someone, especially those of us who lost boxing. Jeez.